Hi, my name is Jordan Korfman, and this is my critical assignment on the Oklahoma City bombings. I wanted to begin with saying that terrorist attacks are something that have very unfortunately become pretty inevitable within the world today. There are numerous different types of severity levels, one of which being domestic terrorism. A catastrophic act of domestic terrorism occurred on April 19th of 1995 when a man parked a rented truck in front of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building located in Oklahoma City. Just minutes later, this truck exploded, destroying a third of the building and much of the surrounding area. The man that was behind this was Timothy McVeigh, who was a former U.S. Army soldier. McVeigh equipped this truck with large explosives, around 5,000 pounds of explosives, which ultimately killed 168 individuals and wounded hundreds more. This attack stunned the U.S. and greatly changed the course of domestic terrorism moving forward. This event was extremely significant for many reasons. Aside from it just being a tragic act of terrorism, it was also an act of homegrown terrorism, which is domestic terrorism. This is when an individual within one's own country carries out acts of terrorism. McVeigh's bombing in Oklahoma City is considered to be the largest act of domestic terrorism to ever occur within the United States. Many initially believed that this was the work of Middle Eastern terrorists and were shocked when they discovered that it was an act carried out by a U.S. citizen, let alone one that had spent time serving within the U.S. Army. This event also changed FBI history, and it became one of the most exhaustive investigations ever done. There are many principles and theories regarding terrorism and homeland security involved within this particular act of terrorism. McVeigh showed typical signs of many terrorists, and his motives were made clear by himself. McVeigh had become radicalized and followed closely with anti-government ideals, which ultimately led to him striving to get revenge on the U.S. federal government. McVeigh was specifically upset by how the U.S. handled the 1993 Waco siege and the 1992 Ruby Ridge incident, and McVeigh truly believed that through bombing this area, his point of resistance would be heard and made. Along with this, McVeigh also intended to create as much of a public response as possible with this bombing, with the end goal of inspiring a revolution against the government, which is often common within cases of domestic terrorism. Radicalization, internal ideologies, and anti-government fundamentals are all often characteristics seen within domestic acts of terrorism, and the same can be said for this specific bombing. This event not only really greatly affected the country, but also very severely affected citizens and society as well. This event, as I previously stated, did take the lives of 168 innocent civilians and greatly injured hundreds others. Alongside with death came a lot of other long-lasting effects to society following the acts of terrorism performed in Oklahoma City. This includes a severe increase in homelessness, considering many people's homes were destroyed within the bomb. Many people also lost a lot of their property, which included cars, their places of works, and many other places. Over 300 buildings got destroyed as collateral damage within this bombing. Mental health issues also very greatly increased following this event, which led to increased cases of substance abuse, along with post-traumatic stress disorders, and domestic violence cases rose as well within this specific area. With cases of terrorism such as this one, the government is responsible to respond to them. Within this specific attack, the first response was to implement a search and rescue that lasted over 10 days. Former President Clinton also made a declaration that this was a federal disaster area, and by doing that, it automatically triggered ARC to set up shelters, food, relief supplies, and other such necessities to the areas and to help the victims as well. Along with supplying rescue efforts, The FBI also quickly began investigations. They started with the truck remains once they found them and began working their way from there. The FBI conducted almost 30,000 interviews and followed over 40,000 investigative leads. Within this very exhaustive process, it was discovered that McVeigh had two conspirators by the names of Terry Nichols and Michael Fortier, one of which just was aware of the bombing and one of which helped him create this bomb. This was the largest act of terrorism within the U.S. up until the foreign attacks on September 11th of 2001. This being said, the government had to quickly adjust and put out the best search and rescue possible, along with decide how to best help rebuild the city following this attack. This attack also gave the U.S. a better understanding of how damaging and present domestic terrorism is, opposed to just foreign terrorism, and that huge threats can lie within the own country itself. When examining horrific events and terrorist attacks and seeing the irreversible damage that many of them do create, many people do have a hard time seeing God or holding on to Him through that struggle. Many people find themselves being mad at God or wondering why God would allow such devastation to occur, especially to such innocent lives. For example, in this situation, many innocent children did die within the daycare of this building. However, I believe it can be argued that the best thing to do in this situation is to turn to God. We live in a fallen world, and God Himself said that this world will be filled with sin and death, and that the only way to escape this is through Him and the salvation that He offers. I think that when we are looking at events that leave such tragedy, it can be hopeful to remember that there is a God who loves us and cares for us and every individual on this earth, and that He even allowed His Son to die so that death could not reign over us. Even though many things may appear to be hopeless, God is the steadfast and never-changing aspect that we can hold on to in times of struggle. A verse that really resonated with me when looking at this specific case was Psalm 9:9-10, which states that the Lord is a stronghold for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. And those who know your name put their trust in you, for you, O Lord, have not forsaken those who seek you. Finally, these are my references, and this is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening.